I grabbed all my stuff. I put a bat in the car. I grabbed, an extra set of clothes. I grabbed my Beretta. I want to make an impression.
Satan is always plotting spiritual warfare against us. His goal is to create as much harm as he can to each of us as he can get away with. And if you don't have a good connection with God, you're vulnerable.
Well, you pray before going to do something you shouldn't do. I don't know. But we prayed that maybe God would make the best of it.
My son has done a very terrible thing. He now is going to deal with some very terrible consequences. This picture makes me smile. This is part of my son's creative, mischievous nature. He'd gone into my daughter's bedroom and got out her dark pink lipstick and proceeded to just smear it all over himself. We saw a lot of this kind of behavior over the years, just doing crazy things. I was proud of my son for the odd little things he would do, because it meant that his creative side was working pretty well. But this willingness to disrupt and to get into trouble always seemed to be there. We typically believe that both the evil angel and the good angel are whispering in your head, trying to get you to do different things, choose good or choose evil. And he was a little more willing to do the bad things. I referred to my son as the living torpedo. He was always getting in trouble. There was an instance with my son when he was very young. My first wife had gone out to some church event that night, so I was left to babysit. And so while I was on my computer, I could hear all this commotion of things being knocked off tables. I thought, well, you know what? I better investigate. He got over to the table where the clean laundry was sitting, and he just threw it all on the floor, and he scribbled all over the table. He took baking soda, and he just dumped it in the kitchen floor. Then he took salad dressing, and he dumped the salad dressing on his toys. I think it was just normal kid stuff. But there was one thing for sure that was very distressing to me. We had a big 55-gallon aquarium. And I noticed that my aquarium was all milky white. One of the two fish was floating dead on top of the water. So then I asked my very young son what he had done.
Tyler?
And he told me he poured milk in the aquarium. I told my son not to do that again, that it killed the fish, and I showed him one of the dead fish.
You know that killing is wrong.
Yes.
Go clean up your mess. I'll take care of this.
A couple days later, I noticed that the second fish was floating dead on top of the water. When I lifted the lid off the tank to get that dead fish, the water felt very hot. It was all the way up to 120 degrees. And it was pretty easy to deduce that while I was at work, my son fried that last fish. So I was a little concerned about that.
Tyler!
I don't remember what he said as to why he chose to do that.
Did you do this? Did you kill this other fish?
My son just was leaning more towards the darker side. If my son was willing to kill those two fish, he probably would do it again.
Go up to your room.
From that point forward, I drained my fish tank and never had an aquarium again. But I just considered my son to be a strong-willed, highly independent kid. who's exploring his world with great zeal and gusto. In 1989, I had a very bizarre encounter with the demonic realm with my son. I walked out the front door, and Tyler was standing on the grass beside the little cement walkway there.
Tyler?
He looks up at me, and he's got this white froth all over his mouth and chin, which I've never seen before on my son. And he says, "I hate Jesus. I want my cat to pee on Jesus." This was a very disturbing voice. It was not my son's normal voice. A very deep, guttural kind of a voice. My son tells me that there are two bad kings in the backyard, that they hate me, his father, and hate his mother, but that they love Tyler and they gave Tyler kisses. In the Adventist belief system, there's always this huge spiritual war going on around you. Some Christians believe that a person can be demon-possessed. Other Christians say, no, you can't be demon-possessed, but they can put thoughts in your head. And that's what I immediately thought.
That's not true. That's not you talking.
So I knew I was dealing with an evil entity that's using my son to communicate some very disturbing thoughts. So I said a prayer of, in the name of Jesus, I command your evil spirit to leave my son. And then I took my son in the house.
Come inside. Wanna clean?
I washed the foam off of his face. I prayed and I asked God, what is giving those evil spirits permission to be in my backyard? And the image that came to my mind was some porn magazines and some porn videotapes. I suffered from a severe porn addiction for many years. Because I'm watching porn, I've now given demons permission to come into my house. I didn't want the demons in my house. So we trashed all the porn that I had, and I buried them in the backyard. So when Tyler told me that he saw evil kings in the backyard, that immediately told me that porn that I had buried gave them permission to be there in my backyard. So again, I dug up the porn and I put it in the trash. So later that night, when we're sitting at the dinner table, my son just suddenly says, "Jesus is the Prince of Peace." To me, that was a wonderful thing to hear. I breathed a big sigh of relief, and I don't think my son talked about evil kings after that. When my son was around 10, we had a very disturbing instance with him. My daughter was 6 years older than Tyler, and my daughter had a young man, and my son did not like him. He just felt he gave off a very bad vibration. Tyler was protective of his sister. So my son took a knife and chased that young boy down the street to get out of our house. And he didn't come back after that. Fortunately, nobody got hurt. I wasn't there when it happened.
What's going on out here?
And I talked with Tyler to stop. Don't do that. That's dangerous.
You can hurt yourself with that other boy. Do you even understand that?
But I just kind of dismissed that. I didn't think much of it, except Tyler's being very protective of his sister. Looking back now, the fact that he had that kind of violence in him was very troubling. That's some very serious and very dangerous behavior. What terrible thing's going to happen next? Every Thanksgiving, I would do a family photo. Tyler is about 13 in this picture. And as I look at him, knowing what I know now, he's got kind of an arrogant look in his eyes. This is the beginning of the rebellious teen years. I've been warned that all your kids are going to go through rebellion, but I did not expect the hard level of rebellion that ended up unfolding. He wanted to not go to school. He wanted to stop going to church. Now he's starting to really push back against my parental authority and just wreak as much havoc as he could. This Sunday, my son was refusing to go to church.
I said, come on, Tyler, let's get going.
And that disturbed me because I'm the adult in the house. He's in my house. He should be following my rules. The church is important to me as a family. But he just stubbornly put his foot down and said, no.
I'm not going.
So he's sitting on his bed with the pocket knife in his hand. And he's opening it and closing it. Opening it and closing it. Just kind of looking at the floor.
You know the rule.
I already told you. I don't care about your stupid rule.
He was making it very clear to me that he was very willing to do violence. And I was very troubled by that. And I said, I just rebuke the evil spirits in this room in the name of Jesus. He just looked at me in disgust. I just let him sit there. My first wife and my daughter and I, we went to church. And from that point forward, my son refused to go to church with us. So I just accepted that's how it is. I can't force him. I just felt Tyler was going to go through some very difficult times without God, because in the back of my head is all this demonic spiritual warfare going on. So if you don't have God helping you, you're screwed. What I have in my hand here is a ledger dated 2001. At the start of every new year on January 1st, I would get myself a blank ledger and would start keeping a diary. As you can see from this first page, it's just filled with stuff. This is when Tyler's in his teen rebellion years. By this time, Tyler has missed a lot of school, which is very upsetting. Here on January 24 is a diary entry about Tyler. Yesterday, Nellie took Tyler in for a physical about us constantly being sick and missing school. The doctor said to Tyler, until you are 18, your mother owns you. He said next time he slept in, the mom should pour ice cold water on him to force my son to go to school. So my wife told me this story. And then, of course, I told my boss at work, and they both said, absolutely, you should pour ice cold water on him if he's not going to get up and go to school. And so that's what I did. February 14, I went into his room to see if he'd gotten ready for school. He was still laying in bed. And I asked him if he was going to go to school. He said no.
You're not skipping any more classes.
And I said, look, you better get up and get dressed and go to school, or I'm going to go into the kitchen. I'm going to get a glass of ice water. I'm going to throw it on you if you refuse to go to school. He just lay there.
You think I'm bluffing? Huh? Fine.
So he could hear me walking out of his bedroom, a couple steps to the kitchen. He could hear me getting a cup, hear me getting the ice water. And I came back, he's still laying in bed. And he had stashed a pocket knife by his pillow. I threw the ice water on him. He threw that open pocket knife at me.
Are you crazy?
And fortunately for me, it hit the wall. It missed me. But he absolutely wanted to hurt me. There's no doubt in my mind. He was very angry with me, and he just wanted that knife to hit me. And that's why I called the police, because this could get a lot worse.
What are you doing? I'm calling the police!
And the police came. But by this time,
Where are you going?
he was smart enough to leave the house, because he and his friends knew that if you're not home when the police come, they're not going to go looking for you.
No, he's not here. He just ran out the door. Tyler!
He came back home later that night, and I didn't do anything about it because the police didn't do anything about it. I was very concerned about what Tyler might do. I was always hoping that the next bad consequence would bring him to his senses and to stop doing these terrible things. But it didn't. Tyler was probably around 15, and I came home from work, and he was walking around with a short sleeve shirt,
Tyler. What's that on your arm?
and I noticed on the lower part of his left arm, he had carved some looked like eyes. That was alarming, because that obviously would have caused pain. He used an X-Acto blade to do it. I said, "What are those?" And he said, they're demon eyes. You know, they help me see things," which was very disturbing to me.
Why would you do something like that to yourself?
But it was another indication that Tyler preferred the path of darkness rather than the path of light. He was very cocky. He didn't give a rat's ass what I thought about it. In fact, he wanted me to be disturbed by things he did. I could tell from his expression that he liked my discomfort. I didn't know what I could do about that. We put him on the 72-hour hold, so the behavioral center had their experts trying to deal with him. I went into his room while he was at the behavioral center, and I gathered up his heavy metal CDs. The covers on some of these bands look very demonic, very evil looking. And so I began thinking that my son's heavy metal music has allowed stronger demons to be influencing him. I broke him in half and threw him in the trash. And so when he came out of the hospital, he was very angry about that.
What are you doing?
So I was very concerned about what Tyler might do. It seemed like he had chosen to embrace evil rather than good. My wife is an occupational therapist, and she's very big on counseling. So she would take my son Tyler and I to different counseling sessions. The counselor didn't have any beneficial effect on my son's behavior. And it was very disappointing to me how the police couldn't help, how the behavioral center people couldn't help, counseling couldn't help. I felt I did everything I could possibly do, and nothing seems to be working with my son. But I get impressions from the Holy Spirit to help me kind of understand the situation and what I should do. I saw this picture in my mind that Tyler was like the Wizard of Oz. My son is manifesting all this hateful, belligerent, rebellious, angry behavior. But inside, he's just a scared young teenager. He's just a little guy behind the curtain who's weak and vulnerable, and I should approach him that way. And that's what I did. I softened my approach towards him. It would take away his Nintendo. At one point, I said, "You can't see your girlfriend until you go to school or stop doing marijuana." So we tried a variety of those things. In 2001, my wife handed me a letter that Tyler had written to her the night before.
What's this?
Tyler wrote that.
He said three different things. He said, one, our threats to him of like taking away his Nintendo only pissed him off. And he said that he wanted both me and his mother to die. If she was going to drive him to school, that he would grab the wheel and jerk it to make the car crash and kill them both. And he said if we didn't let him see his new girlfriend, someone was going to get hurt.
He's not getting better, Eugene.
I took Tyler's threats very serious. So once I read that letter, I called the police. Because I can't do anything to make him stop his violent behavior. They were the experts. They're the ones that are supposed to know what to do. The police did come and pick up Tyler and took him to behavioral medical center. I think he was there for a week. And then when he came back, he just came out as belligerent to me as before. Didn't seem to do him any good at all. He just hated me. I'm the parent. I'm supposed to get him to go to school. I'm supposed to make him stop smoking marijuana. I'm supposed to make him stop threatening people with a knife. But I felt like my hands were tied, and there wasn't much I could do about it. All I can do is write it down in my journal and start the next day with a blank sheet of paper and see what the hell happens next. When he came out of the hospital, I did let him start seeing his girlfriend again. But then, after about a month or two, she decided she didn't want to be his girlfriend anymore, so she broke up with him. When this girl broke up with him, I didn't notice any unusual angry behavior on his part in the house. But I guess he felt the need to express his anger, his frustration, his stress. Both my first wife and I, we were at work when this happened. So we didn't find out about the voicemail until we got home and checked the answering machine.
Tyler, what the hell is the matter with you? You think this is funny?
The girlfriend's older brother called my house and left a message on our voicemail that if Tyler came anywhere near his sister, he was going to come over and kill him.
I promise you'll regret it.
I thought, what the hell is this? Why is this guy having death threats against my son? So we called the police. So the police went out, talked to the brother. Tyler had written a very violent poem called Eviscerate. They brought it back to our house to show us what Tyler had written. Here's what the poem says. Kill the bitch, the snitch, the witch, just to watch her lifeless body twitch, just to scratch my murderous itch. Her dying breath is my every last wish. Eviscerate, stab, gouge, and slice. It'll be so nice as to end your life. They should have never let me out of my cage, scaled with blades, filled with rage. I hope you fear the words I say. Someday you'll pay for your cold ways. This poem got Tyler in a lot of trouble. The poem was not as troubling to me as it was to his mother. His mother was very distraught over this. She couldn't comprehend this level of anger that was coming out in this paper. But I didn't expect my son to actually act on it. He likes to do shocking things. I had done something similar when I was in the 12th grade in boarding school. I wrote poems like this. I wrote out my pain in very dark language. So I saw this from the perspective that this is just emotional pain. The last couple sentences, it says, I may get carried away with the words I say. It's just the way I cope with this heartbroken pain. So from my perspective, these are just big, scary words this is not meant to be a real death threat. He's not really going on some kind of a hacking rampage. Tyler should not have done this. This was a very bad idea. But this did not mean Tyler was actually going to kill the ex-girlfriend. My son Tyler, there were periods of time when he was very troublesome to deal with. One day, I found some marijuana plants in the closet, his closet, and I told him, I'm going to have to get rid of these. And he said, if you do that, that will be a huge mistake. Then he taunted me by saying there was a weapon in the house that was probably going to be used against me. And that scared me.
It's in here.
So I called the police. They got a search warrant for his room. They searched his room, but they didn't find anything.
The room's clean. There's nothing we can do here.
There was no weapon there. So after the police left, I thought, you know what? I bet he put that pistol in my bedroom just to piss me off. And sure enough, I checked behind the headboards, and there was a brand new pistol. So obviously Tyler was ramping up his willingness to be violent, and that was very scary. So I took the pistol, I took it apart into two pieces, the clip and the body, and I threw them in the trash can at work over the next 2 days. So I didn't know what else to do with it, and nothing came of it after that. He didn't say anything about it, I didn't say anything about it. So it was kind of a battle of wills. I thought, well, this is just one rather miserable thing I'm going to have to write in my diary. And there are a couple places in my diary where I wrote, I hate God. Because God's not doing very much to stop all this crap. And I'm very frustrated by it. But if you're angry with God, who else are you going to turn to? So I just pray to God to keep my family safe every day. Hope for the best. Tyler went to Kentucky when he was 18 to the military. I breathed a big sigh of relief that he'd gone into the Army, that maybe they were able to knock some sense into him, as they say. And indeed, his behavior did get a lot better. When Tyler came back from the Army, he really cleaned up his life. He is a much better person. He's much easier to live with. He's much more responsible. Obviously, the Army has taught him some self-discipline. The most violent incident I've experienced with my son, Tyler, it was about 2010. My ex has already divorced me. She's left. I'm staying in the house with Tyler and his sister. It was on a Saturday night. He and his friends were drinking out in the patio. I'd gone to bed. My daughter had her boyfriend over. The boyfriend had hit my daughter the year before. So that made Tyler very angry. I'm asleep in my bedroom, but I hear all this very loud yelling and commotion and slamming things around. So I got up, opened up my bedroom door, and I see that two of Tyler's friends had grabbed the boyfriend, dragged him out of bed, and they're now pounding on him. And they're beating on him with their fists. I see that, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. I ran over there and said, you get off of him right now. I started to grab one of the guys to pull him off. Tyler is standing in the doorway into the hall. So he's seeing me do this. He takes a couple steps towards me, grabs a hold of me, and slams me against the hallway wall. And he pins my shoulders back to the wall. He's cussing, yelling, and screaming at me.
What are you gonna do? Huh? What?
And just all of his pent-up hatred for all these many years, he's just exploding with rage. He took his fist and he slammed it in the wall near my face. Once, maybe twice. I was quite scared. I didn't know where this was going to go. It looked to me like I might end up with some broken bones or something. There's very little I could do about it. My son was stronger than I was.
Come on, old man. Let's see it. Let's see what you're made of.
And fortunately for me, one of the bigger guys who'd been beating up on the boyfriend turned to Tyler and says, "Tyler, that's your dad. You can't talk to your dad like that." So his intervention caused my son to stop. That was a very scary night. I had no idea which way that was going to go. The police came out, but Tyler and his two friends involved in the fight had fled the scene, so there was nothing police could do about it. He asked my forgiveness the next morning when he was sober, which I accepted his forgiveness. I was always willing to forgive and forget, but did I think he was going to hurt somebody? Yeah, the potential was very, very high. When Tyler got married to Caroline, she was the love of his life. My son was married in July 4, 2015. About 3.5 years later go by. After he got his college degree, he starts working for a computer company. So he's doing pretty well. He's making money. Things seem to be going great for my son and Caroline, but they were not going great. Apparently she's having intimate sexual exchanges on the phone and email to another guy. And Tyler knew about this. And we did not learn how bad the situation was until the evening of December 22, 2018. My second wife and I, we're watching a movie, and our doorbell rings about 10:45 at night. So I got up and went to the front door, and my son Tyler's standing there. I'm quite surprised to see him.
Tyler.
Hey, Dad.
I invite Tyler to come in. He said, no, he just wants to stand there at the door. It's very odd behavior. And then I said, well, what's the purpose of this visit? And he said, I may have killed a man.
Speaking emergency.
We heard gunshots, and the guy slumped over in the car and the car's running.
That's horrifying news. So I said, what the heck happened? Then he told my wife and I that his wife is having an affair with a previous ex-boyfriend. That just ripped his heart to pieces. So now he has to decide what to do about it.
You know, and if I don't do something to make her believe that there's consequences, then it's never going to stop. So I want to save the marriage. I want to save it, and I want to fight for her. And at this point, it's like, it makes me feel like I'm less of a man. So Tyler used Caroline's phone, texted Justin, the ex-boyfriend that was having an affair with his wife Caroline, that Saturday afternoon, said, I'd like to meet you again. My intent was to set up a meeting, you know, somewhere where he thinks she's going to be there, and then suddenly I'm going to run up on him, you know, with a bat and kind of scare him. So I put, my husband's gone for the night. Do you want to meet me tonight? And then he says, tonight?
So you're portraying to be her?
Yes, I'm pretending to be her.
Justin got the text, thought it was Caroline, agreed to the meet. Tyler said he went out to meet him.
Walk up to his driveway door, open it, and there he is, and he looks at me startled, and I have the bat with one hand, and I just kind of swing it at his door, and he goes and grabs some weapon, and tries like to jump out of the car, and so at this point, I'm like, oh, I'm not about to get shot or tased or whatever. He brought a bat with him to this meeting, but he'd also brought his Glock pistol. Grab my waist, and I pull my gun out, and I turn around, he sees my gun, and so he goes to like jump back in the car, and at this point I just lost it. I cocked it and I just unloaded on the back of this car.
He said, well, all you did was shoot at the car, so surely you must have missed. You weren't trying to shoot him.
I still don't know if I hit the guy. I really hope that I didn't. I'm afraid that I did. I don't know. I didn't want to. I mean, I wanted to hurt the guy, but I don't want to hurt the guy. I just want to make an impression on the guy.
We said, why don't you come in, spend the night with us, and we'll contact the police in the morning. But he said no. He said he wanted to see his sister. We didn't try to stop him. So he left, told us that he loved us. The next day, I received a call from my daughter early in the morning, very emotional, that the police had come to her house and had arrested Tyler. That's how we found out about it.
Thinking about stuff now, what would you have done different?
Not get married.
My first face-to-face encounter with Tyler after the murder, I went down on one of the visiting days to see him. He was not particularly sorry about having killed him. He felt the laws needed to be changed, that if a man has an affair with your wife, you as a man have the right to kill the man. He doesn't have any emotional impact that he's killed a man. He just has the logic and the reason. He's having an affair with my wife. He got what he deserved. So he felt justified. But I don't believe my son intended to kill Justin. I say that for a couple of reasons. One, if the purpose of my son was to kill Justin outright, he just would have walked up to the car, opened the door, and shot him in the head. And he certainly knew he wasn't going to get away with killing him. This is a suburban neighborhood. A lot of people are going to hear and see. So it wasn't his purpose to kill him, in my opinion. But I was at the court when he had his court case, so I got to hear all the evidence. And one of the things that came out in the court trial is one of the things that Tyler said to his wife. She must have asked him, well, what if you end up killing him? And Tyler said to her, if I kill him, I kill him. Tyler got a bottle of bleach from the house, and he says to her, the Clorox is to clean up the blood from when I shoot him or kill him. And that was one of the things that led the judge to say that Tyler had no remorse, that this was first-degree murder, premeditated, and that's why the jury leaned that direction for a first-degree murder. As I look back over my life and ask myself, what could I have done different? I should have been actively involved with Tyler. The Ten Commandments says, thou shalt not kill. So my son has done a very terrible thing, not just to Justin and his family, but he's broken one of God's significant laws. I'm personally convinced that the demons, so to speak, had probably whispered in his ear to confront Justin and probably whispered in his ear to shoot him. So that was what I call Satan's trap. However, my son has now made a very strong connection with God. Once Tyler got in jail, he took his relationship with God very serious. And I'm encouraged that he's a peaceful inmate. He is respecting the rules. He has learned that there are very bad consequences for bad behavior. So even though Satan has succeeded in getting my son put in jail, God is now winning the battle in my son's life. So I'm confident my son gets to go to heaven. God is very willing to forgive all of us for really, really bad things, but you are not exempt from the consequences.
My dad got the call about Janie being missing. She was my sister. She was mentally disabled. I know Janie experienced being locked in rooms. Fairview was not a good place for anybody to be. She had a good heart. Now my sister was gone. Why Janie? I often wondered if the person that murdered Janie was out there harming someone else. This was the beginning of my quest to try to get her case solved. We grew up in Coos Bay, Oregon. It's like a logging, fishing town. Back then it was, anyway. You got your oceans and you got your mountains and your trees and your rivers and lakes. You know. So it is a very pretty place. There was 5 siblings, and of course, my mom and dad. Carolyn was the oldest. Janie was second born. Rachel was the third. I was fourth. And then my brother is the youngest of the family. Despite their age difference, sisters Janie and Joyce are inseparable. Janie and I were the closest as far as siblings go. So we were playing with baby dolls and running around like little toddlers would. Running for Janie was something happy for her. She liked being outside, even though she was older. We were similar because her functioning level was the same as mine. Janie is developmentally impaired. It was the schools that noticed something was kind of different. It was hard for Janie to sit still. She got upset very easily. She would throw things. Janie would also often run away, but she'd always come back. The Oregon State Police received a call of what they called a walk away from Fairview Training Center. There was a mental health facility. When the state police responded, they learned that it was Janie Landers, an 18-year-old female with developmental disabilities that had walked away from the facility. Janie was 18 years old, but she didn't look 18. Janie was about 5'1", I think somewhere around 90 pounds, dripping wet, and the developmental age of about an 8-year-old. Staff members tell police that 18-year-old Janie has been missing for several hours. Detectives start gathering information. They interviewed her teacher first, and they found out that Janie was last seen in her classroom, and that Bill Graff, her counselor, he had come in and spoken with her while she was in class for a short while. And a short time later, she stormed out of the classroom, and the teacher said that she saw Janie walking from the classroom towards Koser Cottage, which was the housing unit where she lived. But Janie didn't arrive at Koser Cottage where she was supposed to. And then they listed her as AWOL. The staff was all talking about it up until end of shift, and we hadn't heard any word other than, nope, they haven't found her yet. Janie was last seen right before 2:00 p.m. Janie's been at Fairview for about 10 years. Janie was about 7 when she went to Fairview for the first time. I would have been about 4 years old. My parents wanted whatever would help Janie. At this time, they had 3 other kids at home. And here's Janie needing some help that they didn't know how to get. Coos County Mental Health determined that she did have learning disabilities. Her IQ was low, but they also felt that she had some kind of psychological issues going on and recommended for her to go to Fairview for further testing. In 1980, I started working with a group of people who all had intellectual disabilities to help move from Fairview Training Center into group situations. Individuals living at Fairview Training Center were either put there literally by the state because they may have acted out, or people felt they were at risk, or they just simply qualified by having a disability. Over time, the separation from her sister wears on Joyce. It was very emotional for me. She was who I played with, so I didn't have that anymore. And I would be sad all the time, because I never got to see her for such a long time. I miss playing with her. We both loved it outside. I didn't get to do that with her anymore. It was sad. She would call me on the phone. She'd ask me for letters. She loved me writing long letters. It was hard for my parents because they lived so far away. As time went by, my dad would call the school about at least getting some visit time with her or having her come home and spend time with us. He'd go up to the schools, and sometimes he'd get to see her, and other times he wouldn't. He'd get there. He wouldn't know that she'd been moved to a different cottage, so he'd have to schedule another visit. The staff there at Fairview would do assessments, and they would say she needs more of this type of training or this kind of behavioral classes. So they would encourage my parents to let her stay longer. Eventually, Janie becomes a permanent resident at Fairview. Janie eventually became ward of the state, so the state had that control. My parents didn't, and that was really hard for my mom. I had come home from school, and my dad asked me and the rest of my siblings to have a seat, that he had something to tell us, and he proceeded to tell us about a call that he got regarding Janie, that the school had told him that she was missing. They felt that she would come back after a couple hours, because she had gotten upset earlier in the day, that everything would be okay. Police searched the grounds at Fairview for several hours and find nothing. There were rumors like crazy. The search for someone that walked off from their cottage. But I was afraid this was way more serious. As the investigation into the disappearance of 18-year-old Janie Landers continues, a Fairview employee offers crucial information. I worked at Fairview for approximately 3.5 years. I was a psychiatric aide. The day that Janie disappeared, it was just as normal as could be. I usually left home shortly after 2 to go to work. My shift was 3 to 11. When I turned a corner, close to the main driveway that I went up every day, I saw this girl, and I recognized her as a resident. I did not know her name, but I had seen her on campus. I see a car that's parked on the shoulder, and a gentleman walking in front of my car, I thought. I don't recognize him. This is kind of fishy. Why would that man be out of his car? What is he even doing getting close to her? And I thought, should I pick her up or should I not? I wanted to, but there were strict rules against it. So I quickly went up to my cottage and called security. Security went down and checked. They didn't find anyone. Witness information came into play, and they started figuring out that that was most likely Janie. Detectives get a description of the individual that Janie was talking to. He was wearing a t-shirt and jeans. He was maybe 35-40. He had a big pot belly, about 5'8" or 5'10". He needed a haircut. It was kind of shaggy. She also gave her information about the vehicle. It was a gold-color sedan, 4-door. Now we have more of a possibility of an abduction. Like, she didn't just walk away. She was talking to somebody. Fairview had hundreds of employees, and there was no restricted access to the facility, so it could have literally been anyone. Detectives zero in on the last person at Fairview to speak with Jenny. Bill Graff was a person of interest. He was a counselor, somebody that had close contact with her, had access to Janie, and that she would have gone to or trusted. So we would want to know what the nature of that conversation, but also what the nature of their relationship was. I met Jane probably in 1977, 1978. I was her one-to-one therapist. Jane was like working with a 9-year-old. She would like to color. She didn't really know how to read. She was very kind and loving. She had a lot of skills. She would clean up where she lived, an area, wash dishes, dry dishes. Janie Landers was like a lot of patients at Fairview, where they could go live in a less restrictive setting and practice more independence. At 18 years old, Janie lived in a group home with other Fairview patients. 3.5 months before Jane was missing, she was still living in the house next to the group home. She lived with another lady called Cheryl. They must have gotten some type of altercation. The other lady was warming up some chili. Jane grabbed the chili off the stove and poured it over Cheryl's head and burned her. This altercation wasn't totally out of the blue for a patient like Janie Landers. She definitely struggled with appropriate responses to frustration. At that time, Jane was taken from the group home and placed back in state hospital. She was upset. Janie soon has another setback. Her insurance plan changes after returning to the hospital. Therapy with Bill Graff is no longer covered. I told Jane that I couldn't work with her anymore. I told her that I won't be back the next day. And that's the day she took off. She was no longer in the group home. Bill Graff was familiar to her. She trusted him. Now she's kind of in this big change, where she's now placed back at Fairview. To her. Her whole world has now changed again. Police have some questions for Bill Graff. The witness gave the description to the police, and I almost fit that description. but I hadn't done anything. They interviewed Mr. Graff and polygraphed him. And the result was that he passed, and they believed that he was truthful. I think everybody recognized that her vulnerable nature made Janie a prime target for someone that would want to do her harm, with no particular direction other than the description of this unknown male. The thought was that the motivation for abducting this young female was most likely to sexually assault her. Detectives brought a background check on Fairview employees, and several of them stand out. So we were focusing on employees that we were able to determine had prior sex offenses. In 1979, Oregon did not have a sex offender registry, making it difficult for Fairview to screen employees for sex crime convictions. But despite all the efforts, there weren't any employees that stuck out as a person of interest in the initial days of the investigation. The longer the time went by, the chances of finding her alive were dwindling. In Coos Bay, the Landers family waits for news of Janie. I had just recently turned 14, and I do remember asking my dad, probably a couple of times a day, before I go to school, have you heard anything about Janie? And each day, it was, no calls. They're still looking. I kept hoping and praying that she would go back to the school, return there, be safe. A landowner was checking his field and the perimeter of his property and discovered the body of a young female discarded at the edge of a farm field right off the highway. Authorities knew they had one missing person. They knew that this was probably Jamie. When she's first discovered, she's lying face down in the bushes. And as they roll her, she's got an arm kind of up by her face. There was a lot of blood coming from some stab wounds on her neck area. The victim is 18-year-old Janie Landers. There wasn't a lot of evidence. There's blood there. There was no signs of a struggle. It was pretty clear that the body was just dumped in the bushes. She had been stabbed somewhere else, and she had fought for her life. Detectives canvassed the area and talked to the homeowners in the immediate vicinity, but they didn't find anything. All I remember hearing at that time was that Jenny's body was found at Silver Falls Park. The idea that I may have been the last person to see Janie alive, besides that man, haunts me to this day. I did feel guilty, because I could have picked her up. I have thought about her in that car, and that man, with a knife, hurting her, and killing her. Yeah, it hurts. It still hurts. When my dad got the call about Janie, he had distress in his voice, and then he tells us, Janie's body was found. Looked like she had been murdered. I didn't want to believe that they found her dumped somewhere. The first call that my dad got, there was no indication that it was serious, just that she was missing. They knew early on that she was seen talking to some stranger, and they didn't tell us that until after her body was found. It was like they were covering up stuff. At some point during the day, they had a pretty good indication that she wasn't coming back, and should have disclosed that to the family. In the autopsy, one of the things that was determined was that her stomach contents were consistent with what was served at the noon meal at Fairview on March 9th. That information would suggest that she was killed shortly after she was last seen. This was a vicious attack that Janie suffered. We learned that the actual cause of death was blunt force trauma to her head. There was some sort of instrument available to the offender to hit her in the head, and that would have killed her. In 1979, the forensic capabilities were not DNA. What we were looking for was hair standards and fibers to do direct comparisons, fingerprints, and, if we had blood, we were able to do some typing in order to narrow down a suspect pool. One earring was collected from Janie's ear, but the other one was missing. That was collected as evidence, and there were 4 hairs that were found in Janie's hand, like clutched in her fist, that were collected at autopsy. We learned from the autopsy that she was not sexually assaulted. However, it was very clear to us that we were looking for a perpetrator who would prey on children or young women. In 1979, when we wanted broadcast information to the public, were going through the newspaper primarily. The Statesman Journal was where we would generate leads and tips from. Leona was descriptive enough that it gave detectives confidence to try to call in a sketch artist. There was newspaper articles about Janie being missing, and the sketch of the suspect was put in the paper. 2 women that worked at the food cart on Fairview saw the article in the paper and the sketch of the man last seen talking to Janie, recognized him as a man that they had served at the food cart the day she went missing on March 9th. We don't know who he was, but we know that he at least came and he had lunch there. We didn't have a lot of other information to go on. My dad brought Janie back home to be buried. Her funeral was held at a church. I walk into the foyer area. The first thing I see is Janie's casket, and I just dropped to my knees. At that point, it came to a reality that she was gone. I couldn't even get up off the floor. I was just sobbing. After the autopsy and the search warrant, law enforcement is still looking into who this individual was last seen with Janie, and we still don't have any real leads there. The investigation turns back towards who had contact and who had motive to harm Janie. Investigators build a timeline leading up to Janie's disappearance, and that's when they learn of an incident with a fellow resident. Janie had got into an altercation with another resident at that group home named Cheryl. Janie had caused a significant injury to her. Cheryl had a boyfriend named Ray Wright, who was around the same age. Ray didn't really care a whole lot for Janie. Detectives started to look into Ray's background and determined that he was really upset about what had happened to his girlfriend. There was even rumors that he wanted to kill her. Investigators bring Cheryl's boyfriend, Ray Wright, in for an interview. He definitely had been on law enforcement's radar before. He seemed like somebody who would have a motive, but Ray insists he did not kill Janine. We were never able to confirm or deny his involvement, and Cheryl had the same type of struggles that Janie had. She was a difficult witness, so both her and Ray fell off the radar as plausible suspects going forward. The case slows over time because there's really no new information coming in. After about 1980 to 81, the case was put back on the shelf to work other active cases. Joyce tries to keep the case alive, and police do what they can. But by the mid-80s, the case goes as cold as the winter wind that blows across Coos Bay. In all the calls I made to the Oregon State Police, they would tell me, "It's a cold case. It's going to take a long time." Another year would go by, and another 5 would go by. But we didn't give up on her. OTIP came into Salem Police Department. Individuals who said they were neighbors to Cheryl and Ray Wright, at some point close to the time Janie went missing, said that they heard Ray say that he killed Janie. Cheryl and Ray were together when Janie was killed, but they split up by the time the case was reopened. Cheryl was re-interviewed by detectives, and Cheryl said that she remembered seeing the truck that Ray drove, and she remembered seeing the earring that Janie had in the truck. That was a huge piece of information because we knew that Janie was missing the earring at autopsy. If we were able to find that earring and match it to Janie's other earring, that would have been a massive break in the case. Now, 10 years later, police again go looking for Ray Wright in his truck. Ray denied any involvement. He didn't have any other knowledge to provide about the injuries to Janie or anything of that nature. But eventually, we figure out that that car was destroyed, and we're never going to get any information out of it. Ray was always someone that the police considered viable, but there was no evidence that connected him to Janie on this day at all. Cheryl and Ray made statements in interviews, but we have to keep in mind that Cheryl and Ray both had mental disabilities as well. What looked like a privacy lead fizzles. Once again, the case goes cold. Fairview Training Center ultimately closed. People started moving out of Fairview in the late 70s, and then in the 80s. There was a bigger push to start to move people out of the institution. Because Fairview just has a long history of people's rights being taken away. People were giving medications they shouldn't have. People were sterilized against their will. People were restrained. When I heard Fairview was closing, I was probably one of the happiest persons on earth because I knew of the history of the facility. I learned about some of the residents being strapped down or locked in rooms. I know Janie experienced some of that. I often wonder, would my sister Janie be thriving today? The help that people like Janie gets today is so much different, and I think she would have done so much better had she gotten that chance. But she didn't. I was always hopeful that Janie's case would be solved. It's just part of that time I was a young mom, raising 3 little boys, and the focus was there. Janie was still a huge part of Joyce's life, and I think Joyce really felt like she owed it to her older sister to get justice. In 2015, I went to the Oregon State Police Department to speak to Detective Hinkle about Janie's case and the possibility of reopening it. Joyce hangs her last hope of solving Janie's murder on the promise of new technology. I talked to Detective Hinkle and a couple other officers. I knew just from my own studies and watching TV that the technology was better in 2015 than it was in 1979. They had the ability to test her clothing to see if anything was there. You know, was their ability to match DNA? The times had changed. Typically, the older the case is, the less likely it'll be solved because the more that time has passed, the more the evidence is degraded. People have died. Witnesses are not able to be found. This case had additional problems from the beginning because Fairview no longer existed at the time that I started the case. In 2015, Fairview had been gone for 15 years. My first steps in the investigation was to track down the case file and begin going through those case binders and learning what happened with the original investigation. I paid special attention to the autopsy report and the crime scene photographs. She had fought, obviously, as evident by the hairs in her hand and the defensive wounds on her arms. Detective Hinkle focuses on Janie's stab wounds. You can tell that the wounds are deep, that there was a lot of force behind these stab wounds. But there's also no hilt abrasion present. The hilt separates the handle from the blade. And the purpose of a hilt is to keep your hand from sliding down onto the blade when using that type of a knife. And to me, the lack of a hilt. That's significant because blood has the consistency of about motor oil when it's wet like that. And it's very common for someone's hand to slip down onto the blade and also become cut in the course of this type of an assault. So that would suggest to me that the killer was likely to have been cut by the knife in the course of this dynamic fight, and we had a high likelihood of finding DNA evidence on the body or on the clothing. I'm an expert in bloodstain pattern analysis, where one examines different bloodstains to see how they may have been deposited. Was it transferred? Was it smeared? Was it spattered? When I reviewed the original report on the Janie Landers case, her clothing was submitted at that time for examination for trace evidence. The clothing obviously had blood on it, and it was ABO blood tested. But DNA didn't exist as a forensic technology in 1979. Luckily, the evidence had been packaged in paper like it was supposed to be, so it didn't appear that it had been molded. We came up with a list of items we felt like had the best likelihood of giving us a DNA profile or a blood stain from the killer, and not Janie. I ended up collecting 4 isolated bloodstains from Janie Landers' shirt to send to DNA that I thought might be transfers from the perpetrator. If the perpetrator had picked her up and had, say, a cut on his finger or hand, and he had grabbed her and maybe put her over his shoulder, that would be a location where his hand would naturally go to her back. 9 months after Janie's shirt is submitted for testing, the results come back. I got a call from Jen telling me that they found a DNA profile from an unknown male on a bloodstain on Janie's shirt, which was super exciting because now we have a suspect. We don't know who they are, but we have a suspect. Detective Hinkle came into my office to tell me they have a hit on the blood on Janie's sweater, almost 40 years after Janie Landers was murdered. Cold case investigators finally close in on her killer. I got a call from Jen telling me that there was a CODIS hit, and the suspect was Gerald Dunlap. So I wanted to know who the hell is Gerald Dunlap. His DNA profile was in CODIS because he was sentenced and was in Oregon State Prison at some point. Gerald Dunlap is a convicted sex offender, first arrested in the 1960s. Gerald Dunlap was sent to prison for 99 years for the rape of a very young female victim in 1961 in the state of Tennessee. He was paroled. However, in 1973, he was only there for 12 years. It's not unusual in the United States back in the 70s for people to get really long sentences and only serve a small portion of it. I was able to track down a photograph taken of Gerald Dunlap in Tennessee when he was paroled, and that photograph matched the forensic sketch very closely. So that confirmed that we were on the right track. After he's released from a Tennessee prison, Dunlap is hired to work at Fairview Training Facility. Dunlap worked in laundry. Payroll records from Fairview show that he was employed and working during the month of March in 1979. When we interviewed the co-workers and supervisors in laundry, they all said that they worked a day shift, and every single person had a break at 2 p.m. That's the point where Janie went missing. One of the supervisors I interviewed in laundry said that he ended up having to fire Gerald because he had patted a female patient that worked in laundry on the butt. So that was another red flag, in addition to his prior rape offense from the 60s, and then the sexual assault case in the early 90s, where he sexually assaulted his step-granddaughter. That case ended him up in Oregon State Prison. What we were dealing with was a serial rapist, somebody who preyed upon young women. The justice system failed by letting him out. The justice system gave him a free card to go and harm another person and eventually murder my sister. When we got the photograph of him, we did a double-blind photo lineup with the witnesses that were still alive, and they both picked Dunlap's photo out of that lineup. When Detective Hingle came to my home, he said, "I have some pictures here that I'd like you to go through and see if you can identify anyone." I looked through them. This is the man that I saw there, and he says, "Yeah, we got him." Janie's family finally knows who the killer is, but justice comes too late. Dunlap died in prison in 2002. One moment, I'm feeling elated. Yes, we have a match of DNA, but yet he's deceased. So right away, I'm thinking, we don't even get to take him to court and find him guilty of what he did to Janie. I was disappointed that Gerald Dunlap was dead. I want 12 jurors to come in, and I want them to say that Gerald Dunlap is guilty of this crime. Once Paige Clarkson made the determination, officially, that the case was at its legal conclusion, her and I drove down to Coos Bay and met with Joyce and her father and officially told them that the case was closed and that Gerald Dunlap murdered Janie. I feel relieved knowing her case was solved and the person that did it died in prison where he belonged. Unfortunately, my mom passed away before her case was solved, but my dad was with me that day. Detective Hinkle came, and he went from the very beginning of the case to the end, and he brought a brick from one of the cottages that Janie lived in, and on the front, it has her name and year of birth and year of death. My dad and I were looking at the brick and her little hair ties, and he looked at me, and his tears were going down his face. He asked me, "Can we now let Janie rest?"